Today's video is my journey to Lewis Island and the big cypress trees that are in the center of the island. This is on the Altamaha River. Georgia has a long history of being logged, and it's still being logged, as you can see down my trip on 341 to get to Darien, where I put this boat in for this exploration. I will give you a disclaimer. I'm using a 1986 Brown's Guide as my guidebook, and being a little old-fashioned, I didn't use GPS, just the Brown's Guide, some maps I printed out, and a compass. This is not a guidebook. I put my boat in at Darien. I went upriver, doing the best I could to find what I think were the great cypress trees that I had read about in a few books and really wanted to see for myself. But I want you to get a guide service or a local or someone who actually knows what they're doing if you intend to take this trip. I don't want anybody getting lost in the woods and blaming that on me. I've put the boat in at Skipper's Fish Camp. There's a public landing there, and you see I'm going upriver. This is actually the Darien River. That's Cathead Creek. We're going to aim left on the Darien River, continuing on the Darien River. That bridge was the I-95 bridge, as seen here on the map. When you look on Google Maps, you'll see these little blue lines, small, going through the marsh, and I wondered what they were, but it was a picture of one there. They're just these small creeks, passable perhaps at high tide. The tide is very significant to this trip. This is the right turn up a pretty significant creek to get to that long, straight blue line you see there, which is called the Rifle Cut. The creek continues to the right, but the Rifle Cut, which is a man-made passageway, is to the left. I went through it at high tide. I don't know that it's passable at low tide. I would suspect not. Through the Rifle Cut. It was one of my favorite parts of this journey. It was really a beautiful passage, and then it comes out into the true Altamaha River. You can see this is the end of the Rifle Cut, coming out into some pretty big water. That right there is looking back at the Rifle Cut. Very difficult to see. That's Piney Island. From upriver looking down, you see Piney Island there on this map. Upriver from Piney Island, this is what must be the entrance to Lewis Creek. Box Island. I'm going to go to the north side. Cotton Box Island was that patch of trees that was in the middle. It kind of blended in on that picture, but you see I went to the north side, kept going. The topo map says campground right here, but I don't see anything that looks campable. I just saw my first river monster. I think it was a big gar. I saw his tail. He was just an inch or so under the water, and I could see his back half, I guess. Could also have been the Altamaha, mythological creature that haunts these waters. They call it Alti, but I've heard it called the Altamaha too. Whether it's real or not, go and find out for yourself, I suppose. This was the main turn to get to the Lewis Island cypress trees. All right, turning into Big Buzzard Creek now. So much calmer back in here. This would be the perfect place to canoe or kayak. There is an old converted shrimp boat of some kind that takes people on tours, like overnight charters, and they bring the kayaks with you. And I don't know if they come up where I am, but I guess they can anchor out in the big water and let you paddle. That's the Captain Gabby ship, which I saw later. Alligator. I missed him on the camera though. Another gator, but there is no way you'll see him on this camera. 2 gators already, and of course the goal here is to walk through 1,000 yards of swamp to get to these trees. Excellent. All right, we just made the right curve, so I think the tram line could be anywhere in here. I think that's it right there. Yep, that's it. It goes on back in the woods. Probably hard to see with the shadows. I'm thinking that's tram line number 1. All right, this is the second one, I think. And it really is not far from the first one. They're very hidden. But through the underbrush, they seem to go off into the woods. The tram lines are these little blue lines that you can see on the map. It's where they drug the trees out. The reason there's great cypress trees on Lewis Island is because the tram cables that the loggers used to pull them out weren't long enough to get all the way to the interior of the island. Some of the trees that got missed are now over 1,000 years old. Following the Brown's Guide, which is over 30 years out of date at this point, but I parked the boat maybe 20 yards just up creek from the second tram line. If I were a snake, this is where I would live. An interesting mix of coastal and river because there's these little crabs everywhere. It actually opens up beautifully just a few feet within the brushy bank, you know, so this is it. And the Brown's Guide said to head due north. I'm suddenly remembering that old horror movie where those college kids were doing a documentary and all they found was the camera. This waist-high vinage of some kind. It wasn't bad at first, but now it started to knit together at the tops. A first snake. Not a poisonous one. But like all snakes, completely freaky to me. It's the snakes I haven't seen that are certainly the most interesting to me at the moment. They're probably thinking like, all right, here's another one of those inlanders that read Janice Ray's book and should make an easy meal. Here's the book. It's the first time I ever heard of Lewis Island. Probably the greatest irony of this trip is I really don't know what I'm looking for, other than, you know, trees. Is this where that saying comes from? I can't find the trees because of the forest, or is it the other way around? All joking aside, this might end my trip. Boy, that's a big water moccasin, and his mouth was totally open. Is totally open. I mean, he blends in so good you'll never see him on this camera, and I ain't getting any closer. I mean, I knew they're out here. It's just when you see one live and in person, seeing that snake is really taking the wind out of me as far as my pace and enjoyment of this. Bought this from Walmart years ago. Some people criticize Walmart, but that's actually a 100% lead right there. All lead construction, and they use real mercury to get those vibrant colors. I have never seen a tree like this. I mean, wow. So you just get to this general area and you just see one and you'll go for it, and then they're kind of dotted around among the other trees, and you see another one and go for that one, and you know, they're not right next to each other or anything. Being half lost and wholly unsure of what I was looking for, I don't know if I ever found the really big trees I was supposed to. If anybody knows, please put in the comments whether these were them or whether there was more if I had kept going. Just found my first real bog where I almost lost my boot. I guess it was where this tree had fallen. There was a hole here and it's just soft, so Note to self, avoid such things. They hadn't gone nowhere till they realized they were running in quicksand. All right, name that tune. And in the Brown guide, it said that if you ever get turned around and you're in this area, you know, looking for the trees or whatever, go east, and you'll eventually hit that tram line, just a channel of water, and you can follow it south to the river. And just remember, you parked your boat right upriver from that. So nicely done. The compass got us very close. I actually hit the river just a bit, or hit Big Buzzard Creek just a bit upstream from the boat, but not far. Well, that's the end of these boots. For some reason the tread came off. Some muddy business. There were two gators in this picture. Very hard to see. The GoPro doesn't have much of a zoom. I'll also point out at this point, this is me on the way back, and that's the rifle cut. Just for fun, I decided to go home a different way. And I hit bottom, even at middle tide, I hit bottom in several places. By the time I had gotten the boat loaded up and drove home over the I-95 bridge, the Butler River was just sand in the middle, big sandbars that were completely exposed because the tide had fallen out. Skipper's Fish Camp, highly recommend it. Also, the local exchange, afterwards I went and got some ice cream there, and they now have my book, Reaching Souls. So I had a root beer float, sold 5 books, and now they're on their shelves. I hope you'll pick up a copy next time you're in Darien.